So for Staying Alive by the Bee Gees, we're going to be capoed on the 1st fret. That'll put us in the key that they're in. And we're going to largely be playing on the 5th and 7th frets relative to the capo. So that's 6 and 8, true, but like I say, relative to the capo, 5 and 7. And this is a great song to play. It's got a great riff, a little funk riff that is, like I say, just a lot of fun to play. So we'll go through it in a couple different forms. The first one will just be the most basic, and that's just going to be straight notes. So I'll put that up, and we'll go through it. We start off on the A string, hammer on from 5 to 7. Hammer on from 5 to 7. To the 5th fret of the D string, and then back to the A. And then 7th fret of the E string, hammer on 5 to 7. 5th fret of the A string, and then another hammer on 5 to 7 of the E. And then we're going to walk up from the E to the D string. And so in its most basic form, like I say, just the notes, it comes out like this. And then the chord that we play after that is going to be an A7, so barred out, that's going to be 5, 7, 5, 6, 5, 5, reading down. And this is what is played. You just play this quite repetitively, actually. And then you repeat for the verse, basically. Intro and the verse. Now to make that a little bit more interesting, because with funk, it's really fun to just really throw it around. And it's a little bit hard to do that when you're just going. So what I like to do is I like to throw in what I call chucks in between the notes. And I'll put up another tab here, and the X's are going to represent when I'm playing those strings muted. And it happens quite quickly, so it's something that you'll need to develop familiarity with if you're not familiar with this style of playing. But I'll play through it slowly. We're going to play through exactly the same riff that we just learned, but I'm going to throw in, like I say, those little chucks. And one little technique that you might notice that I'm actually doing 2 forms of muting. I'm muting with my right hand to dampen the note, as opposed to... And then I'm doing another form of muting with my left hand, which controls the length of the note. So instead of playing, you get... as opposed to that. So when you combine the two, you get... And those little chucks end up just being rhythmic fill-ins that you throw in. And like I say, it makes the song a lot more fun to play, that specific riff at least, where you're throwing your right hand around just rhythmically, and you're just into it. And you notice I'm actually, instead of playing the traditional spread of fingers here with 5, 6, 7, I'm actually using my pinky. I don't know why I do that. I just do. But you can certainly play it with your ring finger as well. Now what that can evolve into can actually even get a little bit more interesting. If you watch the cover video that I did a couple months ago on my channel here, at the end of the song, I amp up what I'm doing with my right hand. And what I do is I'm translating basically just a straight rhythm, and using the muting, I'm throwing in that main riff on top of that. So I'll start off with this. that's purely optional, but I use that actually to more portray how those rhythmic fill-ins, those chucks, are actually placeholders for just the straight rhythm of the song. So that's something that you can play around with. Something that you can also play around with after the verse is, instead of playing this, you can actually kind of hear this in the song a little bit, and in my cover I decided to play around with it, but there's this little melodic overlay that you can hear that I like to throw in. And that uses some of the same muting techniques that we talked about, and that's after the main riff. So one little tip for throwing in those muted strings, the chucks, in between the notes, is to make use of the transitions that your finger's making between each string. So we're throughout the course of the riff, we're jumping from each string with largely our pointer finger here. And when I make the transition from this to this string, I always have to pick up my finger to do that. So I use that motion of picking up to be when I'm throwing in the mute. Just to simplify in your mind, as opposed to the idea of just throwing a whole bunch more in there, you can leverage that motion of moving from one string to the next to mute the strings when you need to. And a lot of them happen really quick. You notice the two that are the two mutes that happen after the 5th fret. I couldn't actually tell while I was putting together the tab for this how many I was doing. I couldn't tell if I was doing 1 or 2 because it happens so quickly. So I actually had to record myself playing in slow motion and play it back. And I learned that I actually am playing them twice because they happen so quickly. Moving on to the chorus, it gets a lot more simple from here. We're going to play an E minor. And we live there for quite a while, actually. I am using my pinky, or pinky is probably the easiest to assist with the muting. You can also use your right hand. I actually just use them both, probably for assurance that I'm going to be muting the strings. And then during the ha-ha-has, we are jumping up to the 8th and the 7th fret on the B and the E string, respectively. So 8 and 7, and then 7 and 5, 5 and 3, and 3 and 2. And then back to an E minor. Ha, 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 staying alive, staying alive. And then during the prolonged staying alive, the staying alive, we start off on an E minor, staying alive. And we go to a couple more chords, which sound a lot more obscure than they actually are. They're pretty simple. We go to a D, high, and then to a C, high. And then I like to slide my ring finger, which is on the A string already, up to the 9th fret and play a B7. So 7, 9, 7, 8, 7, 7. So staying alive. Oh. And again, that slide from the C with the ring finger, you don't actually have to audibly hear the slide. I just use it to simplify the transition because this chord is just way different from up here. So it just makes it easier to find it. You can do the audible slide if you want to.